here with Dustin Brome of the Massive Agent Podcast, and I'm really excited to be here with him. We are up in freezing New York City. I think it's below 7 today. Yeah, it's pretty cold here today. So we are here for Inman Connect, and I stole Dustin away for a few minutes so that I could interview him. Thank you, Dustin, so much for being here.
Of course.
And so tell me why and how you got into real estate.
It was kind of a roundabout story because I think about 9.5 years ago, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
And because in my family, like I'm the first person in my family to have started a business and go out on their own. And so I didn't really have any perspective of what was possible.
Okay.
I always thought that people who ran companies and had companies were like a different kind of person. And so Rich Dad Poor Dad really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship, and specifically within real estate. And so I wanted to be a real estate investor. I wanted to flip homes. And then, you see all the infomercials like, make $50,000 next weekend. And so I'm like, wow, that sounds nice. And so I got into real estate investing and met my my former broker, and he's like, you've got to get your license. He was the president of like the local RIA association.
Okay.
And he's like, you have to get your license because it'll really help with your investing. So I did, fully intending to just like have that as a tool to be a better investor. And then somebody referred a buyer to me because they knew I had my license. And so it just kind of naturally progressed into helping more buyers and then a listing. And then I realized I really like being a realtor versus an investor. And so I kind of grew into it. And so I've been a licensed agent for 8 years.
Okay, awesome. So you said a different type of person when you said you didn't know you could be that different. What kind of person are you referring to when you say that?
Well, it was just a ridiculous misconception I had because I didn't know anyone at the time who had businesses. I only knew people who, I was in my early 20s. Okay. And we were all just working jobs like at a car wash or, like doing dumb stuff. And so I didn't know, like I thought someone who ran a company was like super smart, they got straight A's, like someone not like me.
Right.
I didn't know that, running a company is like anyone can do it.
So you're from Utah.
Yep.
Did you grow up in Utah?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
What's your town like?
So I'm in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Yeah, in the suburbs, and very, very calm, very, low key. It's grown a lot in the last 3 to 5 years, but I love it there because we have 4 distinct seasons. We have a real winter, we have a real summer, fall and spring, so it's great. And people are nice. It's not like rural America, but it's a nice medium between a New York City and like rural Iowa, where people are nice. It's a little more low key, and and there's lots of opportunity there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what prompted the Massive Agent Podcast? How did all that get started? You
Sure.
do more than just the podcast, so
Yeah.
How did all this get started?
Sure, good question. So about 4 years ago, I really started by necessity learning how to do content marketing, how to do content, how to get leads coming in, because what I was doing prior, like door knocking, cold calling, didn't work for me because I hated it, didn't align with my personality, and so I sucked at it and wasn't making any money, which causes problems. And so out of necessity, I started Googling, how to get real estate leads, and I learned about content marketing, specifically blogging back then. So I started doing that, and I didn't have any money to hire a coach or do a course or anything like that would really have sped up the learning process. So I had to YouTube stuff, I had to read articles and learn everything myself. And I didn't know this at the time, but once you create a piece of content, then you have to get people to see it. The content is only half of the battle. I almost think the promotion's more important than the content itself. And so I had to learn how to do that, and over a year or two I got really good at it. And other agents were asking me, hey, how do you do that? And it wasn't until I got on Snapchat a few years ago that I started networking with a bunch of other agents from around the country that I realized there's this real like thirst and need in our industry for real estate marketing help. And and we started a Facebook group, and a few thousand agents joined that, and I realized like there's a real opportunity to help a lot of agents and loan officers, but also it could help me build my personal brand as well. And so a year ago I launched the podcast. It was one of those things I was just like, it was on January 1st when I was walking my dog listening to another podcast. I'm like, what am I waiting for? Just go home and record a show. And I did, and I didn't even know what I was going to call it. And I was walking the dog, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a podcast. And I thought of the term mega agent. And I'm like, what's bigger than mega? And I'm like, massive agent. And I was like, okay, there's the name. Stupid, but I ran with it. And then ever since, it's grown. It's been really fun. Lots of new opportunities have come because of it. And I've met a lot of amazing agents and loan officers along the way too.
And the Facebook group you started, that's the Snap Pack group.
Yep,
that's
the Snap Pack.
how I met you.
Okay.
Sue Pinky Benson invited me to that group. Or
Awesome.
maybe Scott Crossland, but either way, one of those two invited me to that group. And
awesome.
So I've really enjoyed following you in there.
Cool.
So that's awesome. Who has been your biggest inspiration in not just real estate, but in marketing and growing and helping others? Who's been your biggest inspiration?
This will not be a surprise to anyone that's followed me for more than a couple days, but I look up to Gary Vaynerchuk so much, and there's something about the way he's so matter of fact, and the stuff he talks about is so practical. And so I bought into everything. I bought into the concepts and started implementing it. And then once you realize like this stuff works, then you start doing more of it, and you're like, wow, this really works. And so he by far, just through his videos, through his podcast, his articles and everything, has really changed my whole life and my whole business. I know some people don't like him for whatever reason, personal reasons, his personality. I get it, but like he has the roadmap that works for marketing. And so he's really the only one I look up to as far as marketing and real estate.
Awesome. I'm totally a huge Gary Vee fan.
Right.
Yeah, and I just told you earlier, that's all that's on my YouTube channel.
Exactly.
Is Gary Vee or Chris. So,
yep.
What about mentors along the way, growing up, in your teens, 20s? Who have you looked up to from a mentor perspective?
So in school, in my teens, football coaches. Like I didn't really, like, my dad's great, but like when you're a teen, you don't listen to your dad.
Right.
Like you want to do exactly the opposite of what he says. It's not till much later when you grow up that you realize how spot on your dad was. But so back then it was football coaches, because they demanded respect, demanded discipline, and so I really looked up to them, and they were very helpful. But then after graduating school, like I just leaned on books and audiobooks really. I didn't really have any person in my life aside from my dad to be that mentor figure. And I mean, 'cause I'm a self-educated person. I didn't graduate college. I just kind of threw my hands up and was like, this isn't for me. And in hindsight, I'm very glad I did that, but I was still educating myself. That education is what's important, not school. And so I just self-educated through books and everything like that. So I would say that until I got into real estate. And then my former broker was a big mentor and influence on me, and he still is. He's great. But you really got to find someone or something that can, outside of yourself, to help you along the way. Like, it's too hard to go it alone.
Right. What is your absolute favorite thing, or that high that you get from selling real estate?
Probably I like the when you make an offer.
Right.
There's something about that when you're trying to like put your best foot forward and negotiate a few things and figure out creative ways to make your client's offer stand out above others. That's fun. But it's really meeting somebody new, helping them get to the finish line, sitting at that closing table where it's all coming together. That's like the pinnacle of everything. And just when they are excited, when they're happy. Some of them cry. Like it's really it's heavy because you realize like what a big thing you just helped them do. So like that absolutely keeps me going, even on, because we all have horrible transactions sometimes. That's what keeps me going is knowing that most of the time you're going to get to that closing table and just have an amazing experience.
What are your top 3 favorite apps for real estate agents that they could use?
They're all probably, well, outside of the social networks. I really like using Over. It's a photo editor. You can put images on top of images and logos and stuff. Oh, and it edits video as well. Over's really good. What else? I'd have to look at my phone. For apps, I like using Rev, R-E-V. That is a voice recorder, and so you can record your voice and then with the push of a button submit it to get transcribed.
I love that app.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that's how I get my text along the bottom of the screen.
Oh, nice.
The closed captioning.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if you want to blog but you're not a writer, you'd rather speak, you could just speak into it.
I haven't used it for that.
Yeah, so you could just like speak and then it transcribes it and you can turn that into an article. So Rev's really cool, and it's only $1 a minute.
Yeah.
And they do the captions for videos, which is awesome. The Starbucks app, because it keeps you caffeinated, which is kind of important.
That's really important. Where's my Starbucks?
To me it is. It's too far away. I'll run with the Starbucks app. That's important to me. I use it, a couple times a day.
And you get rewards and free coffees.
Exactly.
Right. So you have 2 small children.
Yes.
And a fitness queen for a wife.
Yes.
How is that?
I'm definitely going to show her this.
How much fun is that? And how do you I'm thinking about how much flexibility you have in real estate to spend time with your kids. So tell us what that's like.
Yeah. My schedule's crazy because I'm not just an agent working in an office with set responsibilities. Like I have businesses, I'm trying to grow those businesses. So like if I didn't have a family, I would work every minute of the day. I just would because I enjoy it. But I try to, after 5 or 6 p.m., come up for dinner. Because I work from home most of the time. Come up for dinner, spend time with the kids. I get to see them, throughout the day. I have flexibility that if we want to go to the aquarium, we can just go for a few hours. It's the greatest thing in the world to have kids, and knowing that they look up to you really lights a fire under my ass too.
How old are they?
I have a son who's 4.5, and then my daughter is 14 months.
Yeah. Little ones.
Yep.
Fun.
Not a baby anymore, but like almost a baby. Yeah.
How'd you meet your
wouldn't
wife?
change anything. Starbucks.
That's awesome.
Yep. She worked at Starbucks, and it was a Starbucks that I would go to. This was before I got into real estate. Because I was dating her when I first took my real estate exam. Yeah, but she worked at the Starbucks that I'd go to every morning on the way to where I worked, and I thought she was married. I don't know why. I thought she was married and like a lot older than me. But I was mixing my coffee one morning, and she came out. And she started talking to me. I'm an introvert. Like I'm pretty shy actually, and she's like, so what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to shoot guns. Like, it was really, really cool. Like, I'm going to shoot guns with my dad. And she's like, oh, I like to shoot guns too. And I'm like, well, maybe we should go. And so we went out after that. And yeah, it was at Starbucks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So here's my tough question for you. Okay, so
you have me nervous.
There are a lot of men predominantly doing podcasts and very few women.
It is dude heavy, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is, and what advice would you give women to get involved or start podcasting?
I feel like there's a field of landmines that I have to navigate with.
Don't blow anything up here.
With responding to that, because I'm not a woman, so I don't know why women don't podcast more. I think guys are. It's much easier for guys to be like, hey, look at me, and they jump into stuff like a show, a podcast, stuff like that, where where they can get themselves out there. In terms of marketing, like in the context of marketing in our industry, I think guys are more ready or willing to jump out there and be like, look at me. I think that's probably the answer. Women might watch this and be like, no, you have no idea what you're talking about, and I'd agree with you. But it's also surprising because podcasting is not. It doesn't have to be a big tough thing. Like, to be honest, like I can do it, and if I can, like I'm not some genius. If I can figure it out and do it and be successful with it, then anyone can. I wish more women would, because it's an underserved space, which is great opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty powerful women in our industry that are launching shows here in the next few months that they haven't announced it yet, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, there's such a low barrier to entry with starting a podcast.
It's free.
It can be. You can use your iPhone and record into your phone. You just need to have a host, and the host is where you upload your audio file to, and then the host distributes it to iTunes, Spotify, Alexa, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, all the podcast platforms. The host is what distributes that out, and that's like $12 a month.
Okay.
It could be more. There are some free versions that I do not recommend, but like I pay $12 a month for mine, and that's really all you need. You could buy a mic. I wouldn't spend more than $100. That's really all you need, and then you just need to have an idea and know how often you're going to do it. What are you going to talk about? Are you going to have guests? Is it going to be weekly, daily, monthly, whatever? Just decide on that and do it. Like, it's really, again, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's really not that big of a deal, but you have to start.
Okay. So I've been dying to ask you, how awesome was it to go out on the stage at Inman Connect yesterday?
That was pretty freaky, in a good way.
That was day before yesterday. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was Tuesday. Yeah, that was 2 days ago. Yeah, that was awesome. That was the biggest crowd I've spoken in front of. I've done some keynotes before, but that was really cool. It was surprising though, because when I went out, I asked the audience how many people already have a podcast, and there are probably 1,000, 1,500 people or so in the audience. I don't know, maybe less. But I asked how many had a podcast, and I was thinking there'd be a dozen or two.
Yeah.
There was one person with their hand up.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it blew my mind. But that just shows you the opportunity that's still there, because a lot of people still think that like they've missed the boat on podcasting.
Right.
Like, oh, there's so many shows already. Not when there's over 1 million licensed realtors and however many real estate agents, and then there's loan officers, and then there's title. And like, our industry is so big, and we need more voices. Not everyone wants to hear from me. They might want to hear from you. So it was really surprising, but I had a great time at Inman. Amazing, like the production behind the scenes, just seeing them backstage, people running around, and everything that goes into putting on a big production like that is very impressive. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
So rapid fire.
Okay.
Books or book.
Like, want me to name books?
Favorite book.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it started it all.
Pizza.
Pepperoni.
TV.
Don't watch it.
Sports.
Football.
Movie.
The Departed. That's random.
Ice cream.
I like it.
Vacation spot.
Puerto Vallarta.
Nice. Awesome. That's all I got.
And Puerto Vallarta sounds pretty amazing when it's 7 degrees outside with wind in Manhattan.
Yeah, it's a little chilly here.
It's a lot of chilly here.
We covered that in the beginning.
Yeah.
But yes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been I've really enjoyed just getting to know you in these last 15 minutes.
Awesome.
Because we really haven't talked much before that.
True.
So
Yeah.
It's been awesome. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for tuning in.